Hello and welcome to another episode in the Cancelled Games series where we take a look at some of the games that never made it. Today we're covering Nintendo's hugely popular handheld, the DS. This is a relatively short list at 10 games, as the DS, despite having myriad unreleased titles, actually doesn't have many with either enough information or anything to show. But fear not, there are some really interesting games on the list. So, let's take a look at 10 of the DS's many unreleased games. Geist was a 2005 supernatural first-person shooter for the GameCube, developed by N-Space and published by Nintendo, in which you play as a disembodied soul. A Geist game for the DS was planned and was being worked on at some point after 2005. It's unclear whether this would have been a cut down port of the GameCube game or a brand new game, but I think the latter is more likely. Unfortunately, nobody seems to know anything about it, as it was never officially announced, and N-Space never commented on Geist DS. Its existence was hinted at in some code contained within N-Space's port of Modern Warfare, which details Geist's credits. Some very early footage was found by some fans, which is what you're seeing here, but it seems to be merely some prototype environments. Geist for DS is still a bit of a mystery. Raid Over the River was a vertical shooter being developed for the DS by NintendoNWRExclusive, a developer that you might remember from my Wii episode. They were developing the cancelled horror game for the Wii, Sadness. The story, as if a shoot 'em up needs one, involves an evil cult, demon summoning and, most importantly, time travel. The time travel aspect is integral to the gameplay, with your plane travelling through time and to other dimensions. This trailer tells us something about the rules of interdimensional time travel in extremely dramatic fashion. Rule number 1, you can't change your own timeline. Rule number 2, you can change timelines of other dimensions. Rule number 3, and so can they. Oh dear God. Of course, the term dimension here is a misnomer, as they're actually referring to multiple universes rather than dimensions. You play as a pilot who, after a mysterious artifact is discovered in Peru which allows time travel, is flung through time on a mission to prevent this evil cult from summoning a demon, and must shoot your way through 10 levels. The trailer boasts 6 campaigns, each taking place in its own timeline. Levels are set across the globe and in different times, but also in different timelines because, as the trailer states, you can't alter your own timeline. You'll find yourself flying over ancient Greece, in World War II and in a future Japan, among other locations. Each location and time period would see you piloting a different aircraft, with each having its own set of manoeuvres, and there would of course be an array of power-ups, including one that slows time. Raid Over the River was to have several game modes, including a story mode, arcade mode and dogfight. NintendoNWRExclusive planned to implement features that would make the most of the DS's hardware, including using the touchscreen to launch special attacks. This all sounds pretty awesome, and if the gameplay from the trailer is anything to go by, this could have been a really good shooter. It sadly suffered a similar fate to Sadness, as NintendoNWRExclusive couldn't find a publisher for the game. The first of 2 games developed by Renegade Kid on this list, Crashlanded was a planned DS entry in the Crash Bandicoot series. It wasn't ever actually in development though. Renegade Kid simply pitched this DS version of the game, as Radical Entertainment were making Crashlanded on the PS3, Xbox 360 and Wii, but their proposal was ultimately rejected by the publisher Activision amid a swarm of studios vying for the chance to create a Crash game on the DS. A 3D platform game, it would of course star Naughty Dog's popular marsupial and see him take on Dr. Neo Cortex as per usual, but it would have been a reboot of sorts. To clarify, Renegade Kid never actually received the go-ahead for this game, but they did create this playable demo sometime around 2008 and 2009. The demo shows Crash running and jumping around what would have been one of the game's many islands, spinning into enemies and collecting apples. It looks great to be fair, the 3D graphics are nice, and it has some suitably apt tribal island music, and the play area has a significant verticality to it. In the main Crashlanded games, the idea was that Crash would collect items and then combine them to make weapons and gadgets, including a frog bazooka, fertilizer gun and jetpack. It's unclear whether or not these mechanics would have been implemented in the DS version. Eventually all Crashlanded projects were abandoned, so not just the DS version was cancelled, as Activision favoured other Crash Bandicoot games in development at the time. Emperor Rise of the Heroes was a real-time strategy game for the DS being developed by FrameStudios. This would have been the first RTS to appear on the console. Very little information here, but the trailer tells us quite a bit. You would control one of 3 available empires, the ancient Greeks, Egyptians or Romans. It looks like familiar strategy game fare, with you building, managing resources and controlling your troops. Obviously tactics were a huge part of the gameplay, and the aim was to conquer the world with your chosen empire. From what little we have, it looks promising. Presumably it would have been a cut down version of these historical strategy games to suit handheld gaming. It's thought that FrameStudios couldn't find a publisher for Emperor, so it was never released. Mutant Mudds, the second title on this list to be developed by Renegade Kid, came to the 3DS and PC in 2012 and later several other modern consoles. These versions are 2D platformers. It was originally planned for the DS and would have been a 3D third-person shooter / platform game called Maximillian and the Rise of the Mutant Mudds. A brief demo was made for 2009's E3, which reportedly took a mere 2 weeks to develop, using a modified version of Renegade Kid's engine used in their first-person shooter Moon. This was shown to IGN, a short clip of which we have here. As you can see, the third-person graphical style is a far cry from the pixel art 2D style it ended up with, which is a love letter to 8-bit platformers. The story of Mutant Mudds sees an asteroid crash to Earth, leading to an invasion of these alien dirt creatures called Mudds. The gameplay shows Max soaking Mudds of various sizes with what resembles a Super Soaker, with a map of the level displayed on the lower screen. They couldn't find a publisher, so decided to try to release it digitally on DSiWare in 2010, but didn't succeed. This is when the game received a conceptual overhaul, becoming 2D, and shortened its name from Maximillian and the Rise of the Mutant Mudds to the more palatable Mutant Mudds. After this change of direction, Renegade Kid decided to self-publish a digital version on the 3DS, and the other platforms versions followed. Unfortunately, there's not much information available on this, but there was a planned Clay Fighter game heading to the DS and Wii. Announced in late 2009 by Interplay, it was called Clay Fighter Call of Putty, an obvious play on Call of Duty, and would have been the first and only handheld Clay Fighter game. This wouldn't have been a brand new entry in the series. Call of Putty would have been a remake of the Nintendo 64's Sculptor's Cut, which itself was an updated version of Clay Fighter 63 1/3. Sculptor's Cut is notorious among N64 collectors, having been a rental exclusive release at Blockbuster Video. Call of Putty would have added some game modes, had redesigned stages, and again featured 16 fighters from which to choose. It was planned to be released digitally, hitting DSiWare and WiiWare in 2011, but for some unknown reason it never appeared. One would assume that, considering it was planned for a 2011 release, the DS and Wii were simply too past their prime to make it worthwhile. Gauntlet DS was a planned entry in the fantasy hack and slash series, which started in the arcade before appearing on almost every console going. This was being developed by Backbone Entertainment to be published in the summer of 2008 by Eidos and Midway. In this adventure, you're hacking your way through the maze-like levels with any of or a combination of the 4 available characters: Elf, Valkyrie, Warrior and Wizard, each with his or her own set of skills. The trailer promised giant bosses, 4-player co-op and a selection of multiplayer modes. You and up to 3 friends could join up over Wi-Fi and take on the challenge together, or compete against each other over an available 40 maps. The game was officially announced and had a trailer, but it was eventually cancelled before release. There's no concrete evidence explaining its cancellation, but considering that Gauntlet's owner Midway went bust in 2009, It's probable that they weren't in a good financial position in the lead up to the release. A shame, as this looks like a great entry in the series. Motocross Challenge DS was a motocross racing game, obviously, being developed by DHG Games. Apologies for the terrible quality trailer footage here. A 2D side-on racer that was originally planned for the Game Boy Advance before development shifted to the DS, this would have been like an advanced Motocross Maniacs or Excite bike. The trailer boasts dynamic bike physics, 16 tracks, 7 tricks, 5 game modes and a track editor. It looks like great fun, a nice update to the Excite bike format. Motocross Challenge had quite the bumpy ride. Initially the Game Boy Advance version had a planned 2004 release date, which then became 2009 when it was moved to the DS. After the Game Boy Advance version was scrapped, DHG released it for free online. Eventually neither was officially released, but it did come out on iOS in 2010. This entry is more of an idea than a fully fledged game, but the sheer idea of a Halo game appearing on the DS is a fascinating one. This was a demo developed by Bungie, described as an unused pitch, which was shown off in 2007. The demo ran on original hardware, and according to the developers it played very well on the handheld. We can see from the brief footage available, which is played on a version of the Zanzibar map from Halo 2, that it would have had a menu on the DS's lower screen which included a large radar and supported the dual wielding of weapons. Although it is very Halo, the graphics and gameplay feel closer to GoldenEye and the N64 than a main series Halo game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and considering the hardware it was never going to be on par with the Xbox games. It looks very impressive for a DS first person shooter. Very interesting indeed, and I bet a lot of Halo fans watching would have loved to have played a handheld entry in the series. Space Agency was a futuristic action RPG being developed by Audio Games. All we have is a promotional video they released in 2009 and a few screenshots. You would play as a fledgling member of the titular Space Agency, created to defend several planets from space pirates. Selected from a pool of many potential recruits, his name is listed as simply Space Agent in the video. His mission is to protect a group of 8 planets. This task would take you out into the cosmos to explore planets, make contact with alien life, and participate in space battles. Undertaking these tasks would allow you to level up your skills in areas including negotiation, combat proficiency and resourcefulness, and even obscure traits like table manners. The graphics in the screenshots look quite good, but by far the best thing about the promo is the hilarious English used. The promotion movie is a game title of Fictitious, and Audio Inc. presents this movie for the world. Now, the possibility of achievement is undecided as the product. The combat and exploration sections would transition seamlessly, or should I say, on the fields. Battles break out in the seamless. The space flight sections would allow fully open world 3D movement. Space Agency was scrapped when Audio couldn't find a publisher for the game, perhaps owing to the lackluster performance of their previous DS games. So that was 10 of the DS's large number of cancelled games. Let me know in the comments if you like the look of any of these, or those that are best left on the scrap heap. I'll see you soon for another episode in the series, and as always, thanks for watching. You can find the other episodes in my cancelled game series in this playlist.